A pleasant evening to you from our Caracas studios right here in Venezuela. My name is Reagan Devines. We begin with a look at the headlines. Trade ministers from 12 nations approved the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a secretive trade agreement that will further liberalize trade in the Pacific Rim. 300 people are still missing in Guatemala as rescue teams resume the search for victims of the mudslide. And the US-led bombing of an Afghan medical center could be considered a war crime. The details on these stories and more now on From the South. Thank you for being here with us. Trade ministers from 12 nations have approved the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, widely considered a secretive trade agreement that will further liberalize trade in the Pacific Rim. The agreement has been negotiated since 2008, but it is not known to the public. Only excerpts of it have been leaked. According to estimates, the TPP would affect 40% of the world economy, and the details of the agreement will now have to be approved by the lawmakers of each signing country.
And we look forward very much to walking through the specifics of the deal. We're confident that people will see this as a very strong deal, very much consistent with the directions and the directives of Congress with regard to Trade Promotion Authority, and that it helps set the rules of the road for the region in a way that is consistent with both our interests and our values. So we look forward to that process. It'll involve a lot of consultation with Congress, a lot of consultation with stakeholders and with the public, and we think that'll be an important and robust process.
Be job losses. Obviously, there will be some industries that will adapt. But what we've done is we've positioned Canada very strongly to be part of a much larger trade agreement, the largest in the world, providing Canada with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to shape outcomes and rules within the Asia-Pacific region, to walk shoulder to shoulder with our NAFTA partners to expand our opportunities within the Asia-Pacific.
The bigger picture of what we've achieved today will be what remains. It is inconceivable that the TPP bus will stop at Atlanta. The TPP bus will move on.
Peru is one of the Latin American countries signing up for this free trade deal. Our correspondent in Lima, Rael Mora, has more.
This morning, trade ministers of the 12 countries, including Peru, negotiating the secret Trans-Pacific Partnership, announced they had reached an agreement. The deal represents a combined 40% of the global economy. However, recently, Nobel Prize in Economics Joseph Stiglitz wrote to the Peruvian president Ollanta Humala explaining the agreement will secure unequal and harmful trade relations for the country. Among a series of problems with the deal, the most controversial one is an extended monopoly period on medicines that could be up to 13 years for pharmaceuticals. Such an agreement would affect the millions of patients who need affordable medicines, particularly in developing countries with large percentages of poor people like Peru. Peru will have to change its laws to create additional monopolistic protections. However, Peruvian civil society have very little to say on the deal since it is negotiated in secret and there's no set process for Congress to ratify the deal as there is in the US and other countries. Rael Mora, Telesur, Peru.
Juan Carlos Monzon, the former private secretary of Guatemala's imprisoned Vice President Roxana Baldetti, has directly implicated his boss and former President Otto Perez Molina in controlling the corruption scandal known as La Línea, or The Line. Monzon handed himself over to the authorities early on Monday and appeared in court a few hours later. He'd been accused of running the scheme which cheated the Guatemalan state out of more than $3 million. But Monzon told the judge that nothing happened without the knowledge of the president and vice president. And staying in Guatemala, search teams continue to look for survivors of a landslide that killed at least 137 people. Another 300 or so are still missing. Rescuers reported that the buried dwellings that they reached were filled with water, suggesting that anyone trapped inside would have drowned. Former members of Mexico's leftist Democratic Revolution Party, or PRD, along with other activists, has launched a new leftist movement called For Mexico Today. The founders say it is not a political party and that they will not promote any candidacy but rather a space for activists and citizens who are not grouped in any party to participate in politics. The idea was reportedly conceived by Cuauhtemoc Cardenas, a former presidential candidate for the PRD, which he also founded. Cardenas said that, quote, "It has come to a point of no return for Mexican society, and that is why Mexicans must end the cynicism as a way of governing," end quote. And in Argentina, vulture funds that have been hoping to squeeze more money out of the public have suffered a setback. Telesur's Leo Poblete Coduti explains.
Vulture fund holdout creditors who have been attacking Argentina across the last decade within the US judiciary have suffered a brand new setback this Monday. It comes from the second US Circuit Court of Appeals in New York and is another setback in just a matter of weeks for the vulture funds. The second US Circuit Court of Appeals in New York has overturned a ruling made by Judge Tomás Griesa back in August 2014. Judge Tomás Griesa is the judge who is hearing the case, the lawsuit made by the vulture funds against Argentina, and who's ruled in favour of the vulture funds on multiple occasions. Back in August 2014, the ruling made by Judge Tomás Griesa was to freeze a payment made by Argentina of $539 million destined to 92% of its creditors, which had agreed to the terms of the debt restructuring, to be frozen, and that money instead go to the 7% of creditors, the vulture funds, who have been trying to put Argentina's economy and debt restructuring process into jeopardy for almost 10 years now. Reporting from Buenos Aires, Leo Poblete, Telesur.
Brazil is going to return to growth. That's according to the Finance Minister Joaquim Levy after the 2016 budget was announced. The minister said that Brazil would return to sustained growth in this budget, which includes a tax on financial transactions. He defended the financial tax, which has received strong criticism, saying that it was an important element in returning the country to growth.
So we are doing 1, 2, and 3. By setting the budget, we will see the economy growing quickly, interest rates falling because there will be less risk in the economy, and try to, for the short term, avoid a short growth spurt, because what we want is fast and lasting growth now.
Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro has complained over the delay of the United States to consent to Caracas's proposed new ambassador in Washington. Both governments have been without ambassadors since then-President Hugo Chavez expelled the U.S. envoy in 2008, and the U.S. having responded in like manner. Chavez refused to accept a new ambassador 2 years later, accusing U.S. diplomats of disrespectful statements about Venezuela. Obama's administration then revoked the visa of the Latin American ambassador. In February last year, Nicolás Maduro proposed a new ambassador, Maximilian Alvarez, who is still waiting for Washington's approval. Also, the U.S. has not named a proposed ambassador to Venezuela.
I sent an ambassador, but they still haven't given consent for Maximilian Sanchez Arvelez after a year and a half. They are very clear signs. Nobody should be mistaken. We want to talk. Yes, we do want to talk. We want to understand each other. But they aren't capable of giving their consent. What do you think?
The 5 Cuban officials who spent over 15 years in jail in the United States for monitoring the activities of anti-Cuban groups in Miami have been decorated in Bolivia. Known in Cuba as the 5 Heroes, they were awarded Bolivia's Legion of Honor by President Evo Morales. Later in the week, the 5 will visit La Girera, the village where the Cuban-Argentinian revolutionary Che Guevara was executed 48 years ago.
Estamos convencidos también, hermanas y hermanos, que las políticas generadas e implementadas desde el imperio norteamericano jamás resolverán los problemas
We are convinced that the policies implemented by the United States will never solve our problems. And our social movement should examine President Obama's speech at the UN. For him, social movements are the enemy. For him, those of us who oppose empire are terrorists.
Los enemigos del imperio son los movimientos sociales, pero ellos son los servientes de las transnacionales. Esa es la profunda diferencia que tenemos como pueblo, como movimientos sociales, con esta clase de gobierno.
Chile has declared a huge new maritime reserve around Easter Island and the Pacific Ocean off the country's east coast. Now, the 631,000 square kilometer sanctuary is a source of food and a spawning ground for tuna, shark, marlin, and swordfish, which are a food source for the Rapa Nui people of the island. It joins reserves declared by the United States, Britain, and New Zealand off the U.S. Pacific Islands, Patcairn and the Kermadec as areas protected from the depredations of unregulated fishing.
Que nos comprometemos a la creación de áreas marinas protegidas en la isla de Rapa Nui, adicionales a las existentes en Motu, Motiro, Hiva.
And after the break, BP has agreed to pay over $20 billion in fines from its deadly Gulf of Mexico spill 5 years ago. This story and more next.
The world is divided among continents and nations. Nations are divided by borders and interests. These interests divide the news. We examine the impact of these divisions on people and power. This is Imaginary Lines. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there. A world infinitely connected. Millions of people instantaneously interacting. Experiences relayed in 144 characters. Millions of lives in every corner of the planet. They're not tweets, they're stories. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there. Rod stars G1 and Claudia de la Cruz are Rebel Diaz, hip-hop activists positioned within a history of political resistance through music. And you don't stop. They invite young people to express themselves about their social struggles. And you don't stop. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.
Welcome back. Now, the images you're about to see are disturbing. Bodies lay dead in the streets of Kunduz, Afghanistan, after Afghan troops exchanged gunfire with members of the Taliban this weekend. Almost a week of fighting in Kunduz has kept residents indoors for fear of getting caught in the crossfire. On Saturday, a hospital was bombed, killing some 22 patients and staff members. We are currently uncertain who carried out the airstrike on the hospital. However, one report claimed that a US-led airstrike was responsible for the bombing as they attempted to take out Taliban fighters who some claim were using the hospital as a, quote, human shield. And the United Nations Human Rights Commission has condemned the attack on the Kunduz hospital, saying that any such action against a medical facility could be regarded as a war crime. The Commission has called for transparency and accountability in an investigation into the attack.
And you will have seen over the weekend that we also strongly condemned the airstrikes in Kunduz that resulted in the deaths and injuries of medical workers and patients at a Médecins Sans Frontières hospital. The Secretary General recalls that hospitals and medical personnel are explicitly protected under international humanitarian law, and he calls for a thorough and impartial investigation into the attack in order to ensure accountability. MSF has been operating the only hospital in Kunduz under extremely difficult conditions, and the Secretary General commends the courageous and dedicated staff of the organization and extends his deepest sympathies to the families of those killed and injured in the attack.
The Russian Air Force, in collaboration with the Syrian army, has intensified its fight against terrorist groups in Syria. The Russian Ministry of Defense published 3 new videos of Russian airstrikes against the Islamic State. According to authorities, the airstrikes destroyed a munitions storage in the city of Talbiseh in west of the country. Hundreds of Islamic terrorists have fled toward Iraq, while others were caught by the Syrian army. For more on this story, we turn now to Hazem Abdullah in Damascus.
Russia has said that its operation against the Islamic State in Syria will last for 4 months, while the international coalition led by the United States has said they may continue for 10 years. All this while observers has recorded mass withdrawals of militants from the Nusra Front and the Fatah Army and Ahrar al-Sham toward the Turkish border. It is suggested that the reason the militants are moving to the region is because they have the support of the Turks and other Arab nations, as the Russians increases the strikes on their positions.
We are for the Russian presence because they are truly standing with us, unlike Western countries, which look to us in a colonialist way. And so they are trying to tear up and destroy Syria under the pretext of terrorism, and their fake strikes against terrorism did not give real results until now.
Western countries that follow the US path are just following the United States, and they deceive us by claiming that they are fighting terrorism, but the alliance has been striking the area for more than a year.
In the same context, the Turkish Foreign Ministry accused Russian planes of violating Turkish airspace and assumed the Russian charged the affairs who denied the claim. Analysts see the move is an attempt at a provocation by Turkish, and which is actually a US request to send a message to the Russians that they are not the only ones on the ground and that the coalition led by United States has not ended its rule.
Turks, from the beginning of the Syrian crisis, were supporting the terrorists, and there's plenty of evidence on that. Turks are sending a message from their employer, USA, to the Russians. Through intercepting the Russian aircraft, they are saying our role here is not over yet. We're waiting to see the Russian reaction.
Of Syrians believe that the Russian military operation against the Islamic State will end the protracted war, a fact that not even major Western newspaper could hide. The British newspaper The Guardian had a report from Syria that there is a majority see Russia as the savior of the region in the face of the clutches of terrorism. Hazem Abdullah, Telesur, Syria.
The European Council is asking for greater Turkish support in controlling the refugee influx into Europe. Council President Donald Tusk met with Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan, who reiterated that the root cause of the refugee crisis is the war that has been taking place in Syria, as well as state-sponsored terrorism. Erdogan suggested that safe havens and no-fly zones in Syria may assist in the crisis. And you may have heard about the Deepwater Horizon oil spill that occurred in the Gulf of Mexico back in 2010. Well, a settlement between the US government and British Petroleum, BP, has finally been reached for a record $20.8 billion. The spill had released millions of barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico and placed more than 400 marine species at risk. U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch said that BP is receiving the punishment it deserves, while also providing critical compensation for the injuries it caused to the environment and the economy of the Gulf region.
Today, I am pleased to announce that we have secured a historic resolution of our pending claims against BP, totaling more than $20 billion, making it the largest settlement with a single entity in American history.
Pink October highlights an ongoing and intense awareness campaign against breast cancer in Gaza, as records show that incidence rates are on the rise. Noor Harazin has more.
The patients of the National Committee for Supporting Cancer in Palestine launched Monday morning an intensive awareness campaign against breast cancer in the Gaza Strip. The event, entitled Pink October, was organized with the cooperation of the Ministry of Health, Al Ahli Arab Hospital, the Women's Health Center, and Basmat Al Amal Cancer Association. Most of the participants agreed that the event was really a good opportunity for exchanging experience between doctors and patients and arguing healthy women to get early screening and protection. On the other hand, the medical statistics gathered lately showed that the rates of breast cancer patients in Gaza were on rise.
I am a cancer survivor. I was in the last stage of cancer. Thank God I recovered. Everyone, even healthy people, should believe that life energy exists. They should know that they can work. They should know that each day is worth living. This is our association's message. We own life and we will overcome all the obstacles that hinder us.
However, the situation has worsened because the needed medications are not arriving in the Gaza Strip because of the tightened blockade imposed by Israel. And most patients are not managing to get medical treatments even if they could afford it. According to international studies, the use of internationally illegal weapons such as depleted uranium and white phosphorus by Israel in 3 offensives against Gaza have resulted in climbing breast cancer rates in the Gaza Strip. Noor Harazin, Telesu TV, Gaza.
And now a brief of other stories making news around the world.
During a restructuring meeting at Air France, hundreds of workers went on strike and marched into the company's headquarters in protest against a plan to cut 2,900 jobs. The protests were mainly peaceful, but some protesters ripped the shirt off the company's human resources manager. The airline said they're going to sue, but it was the workers who said they're the ones who are getting screwed. Some residents of towns along the French Riviera are still without electricity, gas, water and the internet after floods caused by heavy weekend rains caused the deaths of 19 people. Reports are that some waters trapped people in their cars, garages and homes as some areas saw up to a record 7 inches of rain. And British police officers have come under sharp critique for deploying sniper rifles on rooftops during an anti-austerity protest in Manchester. About 60,000 demonstrators were there, with some with throwing eggs and balls at delegates entering the Conservative Party conference. 4 people were arrested. And a report from the annual Ibrahim Index of African Governance shows that over the past 4 years, progress in Africa has stalled. Stats show that 21 of Africa's 54 countries have a weakened performance compared to previous years. Some have taken this as a warning sign, saying that only shared and sustained improvements across all areas of governance will deliver the future that Africans demand.
She does not have a sponsor, but her hard work has placed her on the list of the world's top surfers. 21-year-old La Réunion national Joanne Dufay trains every day and has set her eyes on the upcoming Roxy Pro competition opening in France. She's even turned to crowdsourcing to maintain her demanding and costly regime, having already raised over $25,000 this year.
The week in Huntington was super, but now it's back to my routine, training and everything. But yes, I'm feeling an incredible satisfaction.
Flyboarding is becoming increasingly popular across the world, and in China that's no exception. Performers strapped on their jet boots on Monday for a crowd in Tianjin. How do they work? Well, the boots are equipped with handheld stabilizers and propelled by jet ski motors, and flyboarders use water-powered jetpacks that propel them upward with a large hose that channels high-pressure water. Looks like an amazing ride. Well, to Venezuela now, where 80 chocolatiers managed to break a world record there by making the largest chocolate coin ever. The huge chocolate coin ended up weighing a staggering 874 kilograms. Their first goal was to break the 640-kilogram record set by Italians. The Venezuelan chefs then attempted to make a 1-ton chocolate coin. However, they could not. And to close this evening, Japanese citizens could start riding on self-driving taxis in Tokyo next year. Japanese venture company Robot Taxi unveiled its plan to begin field trip tests in selected areas outside the capital early next year. The system uses a combination of radar sensors, millimeter wave radars, image analysis, stereo, and GPS. The project is part of Japan's plan to revitalize aging and depopulated areas across the country where public transportation is lacking. Apologies there, that was another clip. Well, there is more on these and other stories on our website, telesurtv.net/English. From our news teams in Quito, Ecuador, and here in Caracas, Venezuela, my name is Regan Devines. We hope you can join us tomorrow morning on From the South of Cody Weddle. Until then, have a great evening.